Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge.
Ms. Jennings,
Thank you, Judge.
it's a lot of stuff there.
Yes, and I'll try to make this quick, kind of go through each of these items that are still out there for discussion. But just to give you a little bit of perspective of what all has been provided to date. The state has.
Well, I rest assured, both sides, that I have gone through page after page after page after page. So, yeah, I understand. I have some perspective about what's been going on and how hard both sides have been working. So.
And just to give a little context, why this isn't just so simple. To date, we've given 15,691 bait stamped pages of discovery. So for a little context, this is about a 2-inch binder. It would be about 39 of these. We've given 13,758 bait stamped photographs. That's about 34 of those binders of photographs. We've given 911 AV dumps. Those are digital files. In addition to a massive hard drive, about 50 terabytes full of discovery. And that includes audio, video from about 285 interviews.
This is wasting our time.
15,000 video clips from approximately 79 businesses. 8,000 video clips from approximately 10 residences. 417 files containing call detail records.
The motion is not about what you have
records
produced.
For 11 computer devices,
For heaven's
17
sake.
cell phones, multiple social media accounts, and 4 tower dumps.
Or, excuse me, Ms. Jennings.
What was the last one?
4 tower dumps. In addition to records regarding well over 17,000 tips.
We know
We've
that
given
already.
multiple terabytes of records in response to the 71 grand jury subpoenas, as well as the 101 search warrants that were done in this case. We have facilitated the defense viewing the physical evidence on multiple occasions, as well as facilitated additional DNA trace evidence to be examined at their request. We've had a consistent pattern of loading up discovery and providing a hard drive to the defense on an almost weekly basis. And just to be clear, we're going to continue to do that. As we receive discovery, we review it, we load it on our hard drive, and we give it over. Now, going specifically through each of the requests, we've already dealt with in the 4th motion to compel. Item 214, we've already argued. Item 219, we've already complied with. The CAS viz logs. You heard the testimony, and what we know and what the judge heard testimony for is that CAS viz is just a software program that allows investigators to put in like the records received from a cell phone provider like AT&T into a software program and they kind of visualize. Detective Mallory testified he got the raw data set from AT&T, used the default settings for the times in question. It produced a map. He took a screenshot of that map. We provided that screenshot. He only did this in response to our request to provide a visual for the grand jury. We've been told that optional session files were not created or saved, and that this item just simply doesn't exist. In the current version of CAS viz, the user settings aren't automatically saved in an exported session, but instead it just returns to default settings. I asked Detective Mallory about this. He advised us that he used the default settings. It doesn't take much time or effort to redo this, which is why he didn't save those logs. That's his normal practice. He just saved the screenshots and we've provided that. We agree, we will double check. We're doing that throughout all of this. To our knowledge, there are not tower documents that were relied upon, but we will double check and inquire, and if that exists, then we will turn it over. 226 has to do, well, first the request was for the AT&T Hemisphere program, and then it detailed several other things below it. And we were told they didn't use the Hemisphere program. And you're right, language is important as to exactly what's being requested. And now after a series of back and forth, they're saying that they want AT&T timing report. We have been told if that's referring to timing advance records, those records don't exist. We do have these location records, the DBOR records, and we've given those over. Now, the second part, it says that investigators recently obtained certified records from AT&T, and that'll be disclosed in upcoming discovery production. My understanding is that that's not related to the above. It's not related to Bryan Kohberger's records. It's related to other records that were done later for other folks. But we will be providing that in the next production doc. Next is 228, complete copy of all materials relied upon Corporal Payne. To our knowledge, we turned all of that over. We have given the documentation of correspondence between our cast agent Balance as well as with Detective Payne. And he testified today that the only other communication, they were together. So they were just relaying things verbally, and that he was including that information in his report.
Can you give me the numbers too? Because I'm trying to keep track.
I am on 228.
Thank you.
229 has been complied with. Now we're at 242, our complete cast report. We've already discussed that.
When you say complied with, does that mean that both sides agree that it was complied with? Or is it that you saying that you complied with that, but they are still asking?
That relates to the MAID data.
Okay. Now I just want to be clear about that. So if both sides agree that this is done, we don't need to keep arguing about this. But if the state is saying, well, we've complied, but they don't agree with that, then that's something I have to deal with. Ms. Taylor?
Your Honor, there's so much here. So the clarification on this is they did give us MAID data. I've been working with our expert and we think that all the data is there, but part 2 of it has to do with the Babel information that's coming. That's in the 5th motion to compel.
That's a great
It's a good one to remember. Yeah.
Yes.
And so I need that to put those 2 together. So I think the MAID data we have, I need to reserve though and say once our experts had full time to look at the MAID data, once we get the Babel stuff as well, then we may have a problem. But they did do a disclosure. For sure they did do a disclosure. I just can't say it's all of what we were looking for quite yet.
All right. So some of these we might come back to me to say, okay, where there's something missing or everything's fine.
And I will speak with Ms. Jensen if I notice that ahead of time too.
Okay, thank you.
243 relates to the final draft of the past report. 244 is done. 248, there's still some questions about. I will say that Ms. Taylor reached out to me last week, and there will be a supplemental report to that effect. 335, 336, 337, 338, 339, 340 have all been complied with, and that gets us to the end of the 5th for this hearing.
Thank you. Any response?
Your Honor, just really briefly, I want to talk about item 226, the hemisphere program. Ms. Jennings asked me if we meant the timing advance program. That's one and the same. I just heard her say that those records don't exist. I just need to be clear, if they don't exist, then I need to know that. If they do exist and they were used, I need to have them. She mentioned that item 250, that's the balance training records that we have. That we don't have that. That balance training records related to the use of the gladiator machine, we don't have those. 251 is partially complied with. That's the certificate on whether the gladiator machine was working appropriately. We need the follow-up the next time that machine was put back for testing. Both machines, there were two. 263 and 264, Balance and Kennedy's past training records. I'm happy to hear that I'm going to get those. With regard to the videos on exhibit RR that the court has under number 21, this is where the business said they already had given over their videos, and Ampersand and One World Cafe are both listed on that as well. So they were given to somebody to go to Moscow Police Department at some point in time. And that's it for clarifications for me. Thank you.
Great, excellent. Anything else?
No.
Okay, great. All right, a lot of work there for all of you, maybe a lot, but why don't we take a break? And we're supposed to start the second chapter here. Why don't we start at 2 o'clock? That's okay. All right. So we'll recess. Thank you.
I'm gonna leave the stream up just in case maybe somebody forgets to shut it down so we get to see it when we're not supposed to see what's going on with the IGG. Well, they really tried to lull us into a little nap phase at the end there because there was some wow stuff that we got out of that hearing today, and mostly coming from Cy Ray, confirming this is the very first time he has ever testified for the defense in a case like this. Almost always doing this type of work for law enforcement. And he has some quite grave concerns about what he's seen. Basically, that you would not be able to recreate the stuff that Detective Mowry said that he did based on the information he said that he relied upon. Some kind of nebulous references to other omissions and things like that that so far would be entirely exculpatory. Information about a grand jury, a federal grand jury. Information about a... That was weird. Sorry about that. About a federal grand jury that's involved in the investigation of this case. Apparently, I don't know what on earth the federal crime would be that would be the hook for a federal grand jury to be involved. That's very strange. It would make sense to me if they were investigating something unrelated and this came up as a part of that. Just a variety of circumstances where that could be the case. But it sounded from Ms. Masseth like that's not what happened, that this was just used as an investigation for this particular crime, which is a bit strange and unusual. It raises a little bit of alarm for me that, what, were they hoping to keep all this stuff that they did under wraps because it was part of a federal grand jury process, and so the feds aren't going to want to turn that over? It's going to be under the TUI regulations. The grand jury materials are one of the things that is very protected. And so they referenced this case, this Pendleton case, that basically said, well, if you are acting as an agent for the local law enforcement, including the prosecuting attorney, then what you did through your discovery or your investigative process is going to be imputed to the state for purposes of discovery. So you don't get to do an end run around discovery obligations by being like, sorry, I'm the FBI, I'm not the state, I don't have to turn this over. If you were doing this on behalf of the state as an agent for the state, for purposes of the state's investigation, it's going to be subject to the discovery rules. So seems kind of like that's maybe what they were doing. They were trying to avoid having to produce this stuff, being able to do this investigative work in a black box so that it wouldn't be discovered. That's concerning. So Mr. Ray said very specifically, Detective Mowry said he didn't use a tower list, but it would be physically impossible to create the exhibit that he produced for the grand jury without one. And that's because you would have to have the cell tower density in order to be able to produce, whatever the map is that he produced. We're talking about best practices 101. That was a great quote from him about just the sloppiness that we heard of from Detective Mowry, which, by the way, takes me back to, I can completely understand at this point why the defense is a little bit concerned if they're being told, oh, you have everything, because this guy can't seem to find anything. He's scrambling the day before and finally manages to locate it. You don't know how much of that stuff is out there that they just haven't bothered to look for. They haven't organized it. It's just laying on a desk somewhere, laying on somebody's hard drive somewhere, and they don't even know that it's there. If that guy is the standard, then yeah, I'm also going to be extremely concerned.